When I spent a night in my grandma's cabin, it was just me and her in this cabin she owns with my grandpa, who I believe passed away a year, maybe maybe a year before we stayed the night in that cabin. But it was a strange experience for me with grandpa having died the about the previous year. I can't quite remember exactly. Without my sisters there, without my mom there, it was just me and my grandma. And I think that was the last night I spent in that cabin. That she sold it at some point, and I don't think it was too long after we spent the night in the cabin. And it was such a strange experience spending time with her because it was just so quiet and boring. We played Uno together. I remember that. She was kind of like teaching me about Uno. And then the rat trap, cat and mouse cat game or something that didn't have all the pieces. And that might have been a game that she had with, uh, at the cabin for years. It might have been an old game from maybe 20 years before or something at the time. And this was what in the 1980s. I know it was in the 80s, and I was small and young. This is a cabin in Shell Lake, Wisconsin, on the lake. I've been to that cabin before. I knew it. I was there when Grandpa was alive, and we didn't spend a whole lot of time. I didn't spend a whole lot of time there, but just I remember swimming in the water. We didn't really have bathing suits, so we just swam in our underwear. We were just young kids. Grandpa didn't, Grandpa was like, whatever, you don't need swimsuits. It's a private kind of a private cabin on the outside of Shell Lake, which is interesting. It's like they bought this. I think they bought it. I don't think it was a share rent. I think it was a purchase, and it was just only what, maybe 5-10 miles away from their regular house. Why not just live in the cabin instead of having two places within 10 miles of each other? I think they probably were renting it, but I'm not sure. They did furnish it with a little bit, but they had enough money to own two properties, one on the lake and then one in the small town of Shell Lake. But me and my grandma, we hung out for like a night, and it was just kind of a quiet evening. She seems a bit a bit like she plots. She seemed like she plots, like was plotting. She's dead now. She died what, 6 years ago. But the way she talks is it's just like it's it's uh it's not comforting. Uh, exactly. Sometimes she was comforting. Um, and had some pleasantries about her, but a lot of times it's just like you wonder what's going through her mind. Is she evil? You don't really get that. I never really got a good always a good vibe off of her. And it reminds me a little bit of the Dalmatian dog that they had while my grandpa was alive. Dalmatian dogs hate children, and I was always scared of it. It'd always growl at me at their house because that's like the nature of the Dalmatian dog. And they had one because I guess Grandpa volunteered at the fire department, and he really liked that type of life. The emergency services, he liked to dabble in that. He was one of the first people to start an emergency service, ambulance or something in Shell Lake after the military. He might have gotten some training that he got inspired with to apply to Shell Lake, seeing how Shell Lake lacked emergency services. So he got into the lifestyle and had a Dalmatian dog, which, I mean, that was something early on in the fire department years when there were more loose dogs that the Dalmatian dog had to chase away, I think. But it was scary, and I just like compare this Dalmatian to the way that my grandma seemed to, um, let's say, interact with me as a child. And it was a little unnerving. Like, what was she plotting? Why was I at the cabin with her, just the two of us? How often do children spend a day and a night with their grandma, uh, just hang out, like, uh, with no purpose, just time to spend with each other. But I mean, it was it wasn't really educational. I guess I learned about Uno, and I think we might have had some discussion. But you know, my memory is so hazy about this. I think we had some discussion. I don't recall really coming out of that experience feeling really all that great about it. Like, I wasn't I wasn't like begging to do it again. Okay? I wasn't begging to spend another evening at that cabin with my grandma. All right? It was just something to tolerate. That was what it came out to. It was just like I was, what, 6 or 7, so many years ago, about 40 years ago, a little less than 40 years ago, and it was a different tone after my grandpa died, because he would provide more conversation and interaction. He would be more social, and then when he's gone, and you know, because I've hung out with my grandma and grandpa, just me and them, and then minus grandpa, and it was just a very different experience. Not something I beg to to uh, to to have again. So that was very very different to and I guess maybe it is good to have that, to see the change in the in the in our interactions after grandpa died. I see it before, when grandpa was alive, and then after, when he died. I think he died when I was about 7 or so, 6. I was pretty young, and apparently, from what I understand, he died of a brain cancer. He was cheating on my grandma, and he had a stroke at this other woman's place in Spooner, which is about 15-minute drive, 15 miles or so, 20 miles from Shell Lake. He had this episode, an epileptic episode, or some kind of aneurysm in his brain at 60, I don't know, 63. I think he died pretty quickly after that episode. 63, died at 64, maybe at 62. He had this brain aneurysm or something. And it's like, I wonder what if anything could my grandma have plotted something, have done something? And the closest I could come up with for a theory on any possibility that my grandma could have done something is her demeanor. I don't think she was all that heartbroken about him passing away. There really wasn't much discussion with me and her about his memory. It was just kind of he died and that's it. At their age, you're just like, that's pretty old. That's old enough. People die of natural causes pretty easily after 40, and it gets even more frequent as you age. But if I were to theorize, if Grandma did something that could have led to it, because before my great grandma died, and my grandpa was like they only my great grandparents only lived like a block away from my grandma and grandpa, and my great grandparents on my grandpa's side, so his parents were always around, and I think my grandma resented that. Grandma Phylis. So say Phyllis resented the like in argue if they have a dispute, they'll only take Grandpa Duane's side. That his parents will take his side. He was their only child. They only wanted one child. My great grandpa only wanted one child, Duane, and that was it. No more children, and he even encouraged other people not to have more than one child. Even my grandma Phyllis, I think she was debating on having another child, a fifth or a fourth, and she was discouraged from it by my great grandpa Bert. But they were close. My grandpa and his parents lived close and were close. I mean, my great grandpa was a barber, and my grandpa became a barber. They just kind of they shared the same like, let's say, I don't want to call it office space. It's just a business space. There's two chairs, one for grandpa, one for great grandpa, and they worked side by side all day. They were close. But what gets me questioning if my grandma had anything to do with my grandpa's death is my great grandma. Somehow I heard, and I think it's probably through my mom, that my great grandma believed that my grandma killed my grandpa. Okay, and my mom just mentioned it like in disbelief. She didn't believe that her mom, my grandma, had that kind of capability, that yet evil to her to do such a thing. But I think my grandma's capable of that. She had her moments being evil to me and unpleasant. The experience that, I mean, it's just like you're just kind of like on the fence with her sometimes, being young. But imagine being older. She could have been more evil to grandpa more than the grandchildren. But if I were to theorize how she could have possibly killed him, if and I didn't hear like how my great grandma believes that my grandma killed my grandpa. There was no details. My mom only mentioned that she believed it, and it was just like something you just kind of laugh off or something. You just say, "Oh, great grandma's crazy to believe that grandpa died at my grandma's hands," because it wasn't like something like she murdered him with, shot him or something. He died over time from what's called a brain cancer, from the aneurysm turned into a cancer. It was over time. But it would have been interesting to hear her theory on that, because if you look at crimes throughout history, what's the most popular crime that women commit against other people? It's poisoning. there's poisoning over time. So that's a possibility. And I believe my grandma have been capable of doing it, been evil enough. And I just want to say, with this aneurysm thing, or whatever, this brain cancer that was growing in my grandpa's brain, I would theorize, in my experience, I have spent a lot of time and effort in experimenting with herbals, remedies, and stuff, and spices, getting familiar, taking it by itself and just getting familiar with the effects, seeing if it feels like what the researchers and just a general like description of what the herb is supposed to do is just see if it coordinates with my experience. And one in particular I am really scared of, but it's such a popular spice, is nutmeg. I read about how nutmeg is called a mild hallucinogen. So I was like, wow, cool, hallucinogen. Toxin? I'll risk it, I'm young. And I tried it, and over a little over time, it doesn't take too long. You take the right amount of nutmeg, and it just starts shutting down my brain, part of my brain. It just feels like it feels awful. It just this inside of my brain just got droopy, and I couldn't think right and stuff when you take too much nutmeg. So I'm afraid of nutmeg now. I don't take it. They got pumpkin spice. I stay away from pumpkin spice because they put nutmeg in it. It's a toxin. It's a mild hallucinogen toxin. And I think, what if my grandma decided to put a little extra nutmeg in the meals she prepared, because she had a lot of cookbooks in her house. What if she took the time and learns the effects of nutmeg, and realized that she just put a little extra in for grandpa, start shutting down his brain. He don't know what's going on because he maybe it was something from the barber shop that was causing his brain cancer to develop. But what if she contributed, knowing that this nutmeg is a toxin, although maybe she may not have known it all that well, because information does. I think they had a library in Shell Lake. She could have gone to the library and picked up an herbal book and learned how certain herbs work. She gardened. She grew various plants. She knew fairly good the effects of plants on first hand experience. And nutmeg's such a common spice. There should be warning labels on nutmeg. That is scary. I stay away from nutmeg. But the effects I got from it back when I was in my early 30s playing around with it, I didn't like, and it seems like something that could have been abused and cause problems with my grandpa over time. Like it's a type of poisoning that you can really get away with. It's like they test the doctors test for uh, um like particles in your body, to see what could be causing issues with you. They do the blood work and stuff. Um, and without really researching nutmeg and how it could be involved in murders, of all things, murders like such as brain cancer. I just using my own experience and my own fears about nutmeg and how it goes right to the brain. There's not many herbs out there that go straight to the brain and just start shutting parts of it down. And I suspect my grandma, I believe, is sinister. Was sinister. She's obviously she's dead now. She lived what? She lived to 88. My grandpa lived to 64. They were roughly the same age. She lived well after him. And it's like there's just little things that make me wonder, like how crazy is my great grandma to actually say that she believes grandma killed my grandpa. I didn't really get the impression my great grandma was ever crazy. I think she was a rational thinker, and for her to suspect, to say such a thing, might have some merit, in my opinion. And there's just other things, just based upon my grandma's demeanor, all right, and how I felt like um I wasn't being treated fairly by her in interactions. And after Grandpa died, she put a bumper. This is just a simple thing, but this is stuff that prosecutors would bring up. The little things. She had a bumper sticker on the back of her car that said, I'm single and ready to mingle." Okay, I think she felt a sense of freedom. And many years later, um, after my grandpa died, maybe like 15 years later, my grandma and mom were together and came to my house just for a short period of time. Didn't even get out of the car. And I don't know, for some reason my grandma said that she forgave my grandpa. She forgave him for cheating on her with this other woman in their 60s. Um that's you know, I think she got her revenge so that she could feel like she could forgive him, because she didn't really have a family. She gave up a family. I don't think she was an orphan, but she left Washington State and then just moved to Wisconsin, and that was it. She never really had family that came over. All her family was his family, and I think she resented not having a family to fall back on when she had her frustrations and grievances herself. So she might have turned to getting revenge a little bit more. But I mean, she didn't like. I don't believe she killed anybody else or anything. I don't think. I believe she went on a spree. Uh, and I don't think she really like. She was probably plotting these these uh these ways that she could get away with um like an accidental type of death. Maybe I think she may have been plotting that just just through feelings of resentment. When she felt resentment towards somebody, she's like, okay, how can I get back at this person? How can I injure this person in some way? She wasn't like somebody who would shoot somebody. Well, and I'll say that um, after my great grandma died, my great grandpa actually moved in with my grandma for a short time, and then he went over to Wyoming and shot himself. I think he tried to shoot himself at my grandma's um, too, but he didn't go through with it for somehow. And he was in his 90s. Imagine plotting suicide by shotgun in your 90s. It's just like what goes through your head. I mean, he was so deaf that it was hard to have a conversation with him. I was 19 when last time I saw him. Uh, um, and I'm in kind of this mind frame where I don't really care. Uh, I don't really feel a lot of sorrow for these passings away. They happen. Um, like when I think I was still 19. I was about 19. I talked to him, and then I think he died when I was 19 too, because I was in the military in Shreveport, Barksdale Air Force Base, and I was told by a sergeant. They had to tell me because we didn't have email, we didn't have communication through the computers. Like my mom, I believe, had to contact my sergeant, my supervisor at the base, and say great grandpa died, and that was it. Because I didn't really have a phone. I didn't want to pay for a phone, so that's how she. That was her only way of communicating. And I was like, I was asked, do I want to go up there and attend the funeral? And I was like, nah, that's fine. I'll just keep working. Cause I just didn't want to make that drive. I kind of like, my great grandpa. I wasn't that close with them anyway, so just let the time pass and think about it from a distance of our experiences together. But I don't believe. Yeah, I mean, from what I understand, he shot himself, and he had the. That's easy to do, but you get. I think you gotta. I don't believe it was an accidental shooting. You got to be in a certain mind frame to actually willingly want to point the gun at yourself. But I wonder, women. If you study crime and murders, women tend to poison. Men tend to be more physical. So I just wonder, my grand and nutmeg is something. Nutmeg is a real toxin. Could she have been preparing meals like desserts with a little extra nutmeg special for grandpa that could have started draining his brain over time? I wonder about that. Just knowing how much guile she seem to have uh, in our interactions together. It's just things I think about.